I am going to, ladies and gentlemen, put this explosive revelation in front of you. Last year, there was a potentially calculated Hitjob that took place in the Indian stock markets. The Adani Group, which, like it or not, operates some of the largest and the most highly valued companies in India, and it was targeted. Lakhs and crores of investors' wealth was lost. That was real people who lost real money. Indians like you and me. We all have a habit of going gaga over Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Elon Musk. But when it comes to our own industrialists, we fail to see the larger picture. India needs big global conglomerates that can bid and operate major projects of economic and strategic interest across the globe. Adani is one such. In 2023, Adani Ports took control of the Haifa port in Israel. This port is a key link to the chain of possible India-Middle East-Europe corridor. This corridor will cut shipment time from Mumbai to Europe by 40% and help bypass the Suez Canal. Crucially, the Chinese were desperate to get this port deal as well. Now, Adani stocks have recovered. SEBI, in a court-monitored probe, has found no wrongdoing and given Adani a clean chit. For the last 1 year, NewsX has been calling for a probe into the ambush, suspecting a conspiratorial Hitjob to destabilize India's stock markets. We've been asking who will probe the people who profited from short-selling Adani stock. Now, SEBI has sent a notice to Hindenburg. In it, there is the figure of Mark Kingdon, a New York-based tycoon, whom it is alleged set a fund to take large short positions on Adani stock and was in cahoots with Hindenburg, receiving a copy of their report before it was published. His wife, Chinese-born Anla Sheng, has stood accused before a US Congress committee for spreading propaganda for the Chinese state and having close links with the CCP. Now, India's MP and senior advocate Mahesh Jethmalani has picked up the cudgels, and he says there is a serious conspiracy here that requires further investigation. The skeletons are tumbling out. Let's jump and take a deep dive into what needs to be done next. Thank you, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani, for joining me on the telecast. And my first question to you about this big explosive revelation that has been made, and what, according to you, is the problem and the revelation where Mark Kingdom and his association with Hindenburg. If you could shed more light into it.
Mark Kingdon was the man who wanted to short sell Adani shares. He's a businessman in America. He runs a fund along with his wife, Anla Cheng, a Chinese American. He was the one who approached Hindenburg for a research report on the Adani group of companies. And he's the one who approached Kotak to set up a trading account for him. He's the one who gave money to trade after Kotak set up the Kotak India Opportunity Fund, KOIF for short. He's the one, he and his wife are the ones who sort of advanced money from their fund to Kotak. And Kotak then took positions in Adani shares. And after the report came, those positions were squared up.
Right. Also, what has the SEBI said in its notice to Hindenburg regarding Mark Kingdon?
SEBI issued a show cause notice regarding its role, right, and for further details about the entire transaction. And the response is more important. The response from Hindenburg was, listen, we were only researchers engaged by Mark Kingdon, right? And we got a percentage of the profits he was supposed to make, right? And they got that percentage of profits, I think about 20% or so. Hindenburg also said that, look, Kotak is also involved with this. The Kotak KMIL, Kotak's Overseas Investment Unit, which then created this Kotak India Opportunity Fund, right, as a special purpose vehicle, which sent the couples, that is Mark and Anla's money to India through the Mauritius route for trading in Adani shares.
And why do you suspect that there is a potential China linkage to any of this?
This lady, Anla Cheng, is now the subject matter of an investigation by the US Congress. She used to run a country called China, right, which is a very pro-China outfit. It used to promote China's strategic interests in the United States. Basically, a very, very accomplished lobbyist for China, and a whistleblower within China, a lady called Shannon Von Sant, right? Then, after some time, found that China's activities were very, very dubious, right? And she found that there was a lot of subversive activities going on, and it had become almost, a den of Chinese spies. And she then made a sworn statement to the U.S. Congress, and the U.S. Congress is now, under demands from some senators, considering an investigation into the espionage activities of Madam Cheng.
Now, some of the people are saying that this is because Adani Ports got the Haifa project in Israel instead of China. And what do you have to say to that?
There have been 2 or 3 theaters of competition or irritation between Adani and China. The most important, I think, 2 big important ones were a Jaffna coal mine and of course, the Haifa port in Israel. This Hitjob shortly followed the Chinese losing out these 2 projects, very strategic projects, to the Adani group. There was also an irritation by a railway line, which Adanis had set up in Australia, in the Galilee area. And the Adanis didn't take their railway line right up to China's coal mine, and therefore did not service the Chinese interests over there, their coal mine interests. It didn't go up all the way there, so it became a transportation issue for the Chinese. And that was an irritant again. So they've been pretty peeved and angry with obviously by the Adani's victories in bids, as I said, in strategic areas and other activities such as this railway line irritation. So they had an axe to grind, and they wanted to cut Adani's down to size. So this seemed to be an ample opportunity, and they went to the America, used their Chinese agents there, Madam Cheng, and tried to bring the Adani group into both financial loss and reputational loss of face.
Now, Kotak has also issued a statement, and they have said that they don't have any association with Hindenburg. Do you want them to clarify further on their association with Mark Kingdon?
I think that Kotak will have to make a complete break as to what all they knew. I mean, look, what they did know, what we knew, don't they know, which in any case is it may not be illegal, but that's whether it was the right thing for them to do or not, I don't know. I mean, they knew that the fund that the outfit they set up, the KIOF, was only for one purpose. They had no other trading activity. It was a special purpose vehicle only for Mark and Anla, right? It was only to short sell Adani shares. So they knew that this was a short sell operation. That's all we can say about them. Short selling is not illegal, right? But when you have did Kotak know that this short sell operation was a Chinese inspired one? They'll have to clarify all those questions.
Now, with all this information that has been put in public domain, what action would you like to see in this matter?
I don't want to say anything else, but I've already set out in my tweet on X what the direction SEBI should take. But I think we'll need a more. I'm proposing to actually write a letter to SEBI in the near future. So maybe once I've researched it in greater detail, I'll get down to doing that, just as a interest of a private citizen and a member of parliament.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani, for joining me on the telecast and telling us the story as it is. I'm also right now being joined by Sharad Kohli. Sharad Kohli, explosive revelations. It was not just about short-selling opportunity that was grabbed by the callers, by this individual, by this tycoon by the name of Mark Kindon. And he used his powers and influence to gather support of Hindenburg, who then provided these reports before they published it in public domain. But here it is, we see that it is the Chinese Communist Party which had an agenda to attack India's election cycle, to attack Adani group of companies, simply because it was out of revenge. They could not get the Haifa port.
Well, good evening, Megha. Good evening to Dr. Jayjeet and other panelists, and good evening to NewsX viewers. Yes, I think the Chinese heartburn has been evident more often than not. Chinese, they cannot tolerate India's robust infrastructure being built. Ever since they have known that India is coming up as an economic superpower, and they are losing that position, so-called, they thought that they were in that position. And they now felt that probably India is replacing them, not just Haifa port or Jaffna, as a project, but it is also the number of organizations, Megha, which are relocating from China now. As I have said before, I would like to reiterate that a very common boardroom discussion for overseas Chinese investing companies in over there is where to relocate, and India is coming up as the next best choice. We've seen that happening in the case of Apple. We've seen this happening in the case of so many things, and a lot of Chinese companies who are originating from America, from Europe, from other places, they want to relocate because Chinese Communist Party is suffocating them. If you put your board members, I'm talking of the Communist Party, if you put the board members on the boards of these companies, you meddle with their affairs, you breach their privacy norms, you want to dominate their boardroom discussions, then obviously you are suffocating the investors. So gradually the investors have started realizing that this is not the best place on the earth to be, as was thought earlier. So they are looking for alternate locations, and India is coming up as the best location. So that is causing, Megha, a lot of heartburn. And Adani Group, because it was involved with India's infrastructure push, so they thought there will be a golden opportunity. I won't be surprised if this Chinese lady also got a cut in the profits being made by Hindenburg. I'm sure the profit made, although they say $4.1 billion, but I totally refute that. The billions of dollars of profit made, I'm sure that profit has been distributed between all these gang members. I'm sorry, I'm calling them gang members because they ganged up together to bring disrepute to the Adani Group, to the country, to country's infrastructure, to country's growth story. So I'm not really surprised by this Chinese hand or the Chinese factor coming up in this whole issue, because you can expect China has been, spying countries, spying companies, spying people. It's known all over the world of what they do. I mean, every activity of theirs is under question, whether you talk of Europe, you talk of America. There's so many investigations going on in America on the Chinese companies and Chinese individuals. And India, by the way, is not giving visas, Megha, now to Chinese nationals as they come to India. So I think China has already got the message. But as they say that China only learns the hard way, it is not going to learn this way. And it's a very sorry state of affairs. And China will end up isolating itself, Megha, from the rest of the world. I'm telling you, if it continues to get into such nefarious activities.
Okay, all right. I also have with me Jayjeet Bhattacharya. What a spectacular twist to this entire drama that played out, and that has hurt the domestic market in the country. People like you and I have mutual funds, and that mutual fund had the Adani group of companies that was part of that entire stock, that entire share. And there you have it, that thousands and thousands of people have lost lakhs and lakhs of money. Talking about how there is this Chinese link, and this Chinese link could be deciphered because of this American whistleblower who spoke about how the wife of this tycoon, New York-based tycoon by the name of Mark Kindon, was the one who was closely associated with the CCP. She was almost like a mouthpiece and a propagator and an admirer of the CCP, and that brought to the conclusion that this is the cycle that was followed, and there you had Hindenburg and you had Kinden, and then you have this woman who's the wife of Kinden, and then of course all of these proofs and evidences pointing to the CCP.
China has always believed in grey zone warfare. They have been focusing on warfare by other means. So the issue was not just Adani, because Adani companies are basically based on how the Indian economy is growing, because they are making large infrastructure bets, be it energy, be it other kinds of energy of infrastructure, and hence trying to rein in Adani also impacts the economy. As I mentioned on the show umpteen number of times, that we have lost a year and a half in terms of infrastructure rollout by one of the largest corporations in India. And that impacts, as you rightly said, you and me, not just in terms of the mutual funds whose valuation went down, but also in terms of actual infrastructure, which is now delayed by a year and a half, and therefore all the other economic activities that could have come up because of that infrastructure. Now, obviously, Adani has been rolling out strategic infrastructure also for India in places like Haifa, like the way Mr. Jethmalani mentioned. They've also been, giving a run for the money for Chinese in Australia, in Sri Lanka, and so on and so forth. So clearly, Adani is part of India's own geostrategic outreach and was playing and continues to play an important role. Now, if Adani gets stopped, India gets stopped. And that clearly seems to be the way forward that has been taken up. I think also what is important to ask is, why did this cabal of people within India also go around supporting this particular Hindenburg report? And they were ready with their cases to be filed in Supreme Court, and also the timing of the entire report. Because you see, the Galwan Valley clash happened in 2020. 2023, this report comes out just before the general elections that were supposed to be scheduled in this year. So clearly, the aim was to remove the current government dispensation that we have in India, which doesn't seem to be very palatable to the Chinese. It doesn't seem to bend to what China wants, and is aggressively stopping Chinese aggression against India. So getting rid of this dispensation also seems to be one of the targets that China had.
Absolutely.
So clearly there was a political angle, there was an economic angle, there was an industrial angle. It was a clear grey zone warfare, and Hindenburg was one of the arms that was used for that purpose.
You're absolutely right. Professor Madhu Nalapat, let's hear it from you as well. And I'm going to just, what a spectacular cycle of this nefarious activity that has been conducted by this man by the name of Mark Hindenburg. But he's just the face of it. Behind it all, it is the Chinese Communist Party, because this man invests into a fund from Kotak Mahindra Investment Limited. This fund is called the Kotak India Opportunities Fund. And then he takes short positions on Adani stock via the Mauritius funds that he then brings up transferring over there. In the meantime, he has also hired Hindenburg, and Hindenburg releases a report. Before releasing the report, it has already been provided to Kinden, so he already knows, and he has taken the short positions on Adani group of companies, and these stock obviously ultimately crash because of the short selling activity that has been done, and there is large amounts of profit that is then made by Mark Kinden, and I don't know how many others. But what confounds me is the Chinese involvement over here. It was not just economic profits. It wasn't just the profits, economic advantages that these individuals wanted to take. And as Jaijit said, it was political. It was to dent the image of India across the globe. It was to dent the electoral process in the country, to bring down the government, an effort that was done to bring down the government, and of course strategically, where the revenge that had been sought by China, the Communist Party, for the number of acquiring of those ports that had been done by Adani group of companies was something of a revenge tactic that was played by the Chinese.
Well, I'd like to say, Megha, that Ram Jethmalani is one of the most outstanding lawyers in the world. And I think Mahesh has learned a lot of lessons from him. And he's following in his father's footsteps where the practice of law is concerned. And he has certainly built a very convincing case about the external involvement in this particular study of Hindenburg. I'd like to say that Hindenburg was definitely given data by inside sources. I would say sources at possibly very high levels inside the system who had access to a lot of sensitive data that could be twisted in a form which suits the purpose of a short seller. So Hindenburg operated on the basis of tremendous amount of information given to him by inside sources in India, and we have still got to discover who those inside sources are. And the point is, Megha, you're talking about short selling and money making in China. The Chinese Communist Party specializes in using money as a bait to ensure that people work for it. The bait they use is money. That you work for the Chinese Communist Party, you'll make tons of money. You'll be a multi-millionaire, a multi-billionaire. And that, frankly, is standard practice for them. So it's no surprise. The point is that, the Chinese are definitely targeting the Indian stock market because India is emerging as an alternative destination to China. You remember in the 1990s, India could have been an alternative investment destination to China. But unfortunately, P.V. Narasimha Rao, his reforms were opposed by his own party. And finally, important elements like the exit policy were basically sabotaged from within the Congress party and the revolt against him. Now, again, we have a chance of attracting massive investment in the way the Chinese basically attracted the 1990s. And the way, I think, one of the ways in which they want to try and damage the climate in India is by gyrations in the stock market.
Right.
We have to be very cautious and careful because, for example, derivatives trading in India. Derivatives trading in India today, in 2017, it was not very high. Today, it is higher than the GDP of India. So therefore, SEBI has got to exercise a lot of attention, a lot of care on these matters. So this kind of hostile players who are functioning, some of whom are functioning under CCP direction, do not get a handle to wreak their mischief. Okay. There's no doubt that this was mischief. There's no doubt it was designed to take down a very large Indian corporate, and has correctly been said by Joydeep, there has been a lot of consequences to that, to investors and to the public. But the point is that SEBI has got to be very watchful about this kind of thing. And frankly, shutting the stable door after the horse is bolted is no answer to it. So I think SEBI needs to be much more alert in this matter because, as I said before, and this is not unusual, in many countries, the stock exchanges are more than the GDP. In India also, it's a sign of good health that the stock market, the derivatives trading is higher than GDP because there's a lot of interest in Indian stocks. And that interest has got to continue. And definitely an effort will be made to try and prevent that interest from happening by trying and creating stock market, gyrations. And I think SEBI has got to be very watchful and keep the security angle in mind and has got to be strengthened in several of its parameters. And it has got to be much improved in its functioning if India is to attract the Modi 3.0 goal of becoming a double-digit economy. It can do that if, unlike in the 1990s, it attracts a substantial volume of investment, this time away from China. And yes, the Chinese and multiple other actors will do whatever they can to block Prime Minister Modi in this effort. Megha.
Sharad Kohli, now, what options does SEBI have in taking action against this serious crime that has been committed at the behest of the CCP?
Yeah, SEBI, I feel, Megha, SEBI, because of the jurisdictional issues, may face some roadblocks. It's not going to be an easy ride for SEBI to go and act against, an agency which is based out of the country. You will have to use the lawyers locally. But I think these guys should not be spared. As I have said that earlier on your channel as well, that these people should be taught a lesson. And I would even urge Adani Group, which is a very wealthy group now. I mean, they've got diverse business interests, and they are amongst the top business groups in the country. They should go and hire top lawyers in the United States and bring these person to book. They should not be let off that easily. If we let them off that easily, tomorrow some other agency, some other propaganda against India, some other propaganda against India's growth story is going to come and hit. And there could be people like George Soros and others who could be already plotting it. We don't know. We only know when it hits us. So I think if these people are taught a lesson, it has to be nipped in the bud. You cannot allow such, a conspiracy to be building against the country. And one fine day, suddenly we find that it comes and hit you below the belt, either in stock market or in some other way, disreputing the country. I think immediate legal action. I don't know how much is the time in a show cause notice, Megha. There is always a time limit that you are asked to reply in so and so days. If you do not, we will proceed with legal action.
Okay.
I'm not sure as to how much time has SEBI allowed, but they should not be spared under any circumstances, Megha.
Yeah, but then, how feasible will it be, and is it going to be practically possible for SEBI to go after this individual by the name of Mark Kinden and his wife?
Yes, I think it's a small world, Megha. All you need to do is, if we can fight for bringing the fugitives to India. We can hire best of the lawyers in the local countries. Fine, extraditing a fugitive is a tough task. But here, even if we don't get them extradited, at least we can make sure that they are punished as per the local laws. Because Hindenburg, as far as America is concerned, was always not in the good books of America, as far as the American government is concerned. It has been accused of financial crimes earlier also. So I think all that is needed is a bit of a nudge and a comprehensive legal action against these guys. And I would feel that SEBI is doing its bit, but Adani, because SEBI is a kind of a quasi-government agency and it's a regulatory agency. So I would suggest that Adani Group, because they were the sufferers, $115 billion, Megha, lost in terms of market capitalization. As you rightly said, you might be one of the investors. I think they should not be spared. I had even spelled out the amount that $1 trillion should be the amount quoted in the suit that should be claimed from these people, and the entire team will be brought to books. I'm sure when this goes to the court, no string will be left to be exposed. I think every single aspect of this whole conspiracy would be exposed, but it just have to go legal very comprehensively without being worried about the cost, Megha.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani said, that he is going to see this to the end. He is already going to put in a paper, demand for the government. He said he is going to write to SEBI. And there is going to be, if the wheels start moving, it can be done in a step-by-step way. And like you said, it's a small world, and if there can be linkages that can be drawn, and we already have these evidences and proofs, and people like the whistleblower whose letter has now been released in public domain, it will not be difficult to then pin down the culprits and the criminals in this case. Also, Jayjit, now, don't you think that Kotak Bank must also reveal the role of Kinden in any of its funds, and what are the profits accrued through this fund after the short selling that took place?
The role of the bank is essentially to do the KYC, know your customer. And if Kinden had represented that they are doing some trades, then they're doing some trades. Now, are they doing short trading? Well, that's actually legal. So there isn't much that one can hold against Kotak Mahindra. Obviously, with very sketchy details, I wouldn't know more than that. But in terms of what is available, the matter is that's that from a Kotak Mahindra perspective. If they knew that that Kindens are operating on the instructions of the Chinese or in the instructions of other interests and powers, and if they had not revealed that, then that's clearly an issue that needs to be dealt with Kotak Mahindra. In addition, I think to take the steps that we were just talking about against Hindenburg and against the people involved, I think now is the time for US to show that they are really a friend of India, if that's a kind of relationship they want, because clearly here is an entity which is the Chinese Communist Party, which is a thorn for both China and for both US and for India. So it's in US's interest to also start taking interest and to help India in its investigations and bring to book those who are involved in this nefarious activity. If they had shown so much interest in a plumber, then I think it's high time that they start showing interest in other entities like the one that we're talking about, like the kingdom. And obviously, by the plumber, I mean the Khalistani terrorists who passed themselves off as a plumber and they were eventually killed in gang wars. So the US had shown so much of interest in that terrorist. I think it's worth time now for US to start showing interest in other activities which are both anti-India and anti-US in that sense, because the same mechanisms can be used against US and has been used against US, which is what we are all alarmed about. Because the same lady who took these initiatives against US is the one who's involved in doing this head job against India. And for the last 2 years, we have been, or a year, we have been saying that this is a head job. The word that we have been using is a head job, because in tandem, it was not just people based out of US who are outside the jurisdiction of Indian institutions, but also people based within this country who have been amplifying this issue and as if on a cue, taking it to the Supreme Court, talking down the business enterprise of Adani, saying that these were all, a part of the government initiative and not really
Right.
an entrepreneurial initiatives, and this has been taken up in Parliament. So it's some of the questions that Mr. Jethmalani asked, that why were the politicians involved, what was in their interest. I think these are also questions that need to be investigated.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, now there are questions that are going to arise in everybody's mind. Now, what are the chances of prosecuting Kindon and his Chinese wife, and who are the officials that may have been involved from the Chinese Communist Party, when the world could not even pin down China for the pandemic as big as COVID that ended up killing millions and caused entire economies to come to a naught?
Well, the fact is that the WHO completely went with the Chinese Communist Party version of COVID, and which, of course, was not correct. We all know it was caused through a lab leak. But till today, that's not been officially confirmed. And I'm sorry to say the Biden administration has not been really very efficient in that matter. I'd like to point out that even in the US, it would be a serious offense to work on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. So if our security agencies have any lead, or if their US counterparts have any lead, or, for example, counterparts in London, Frankfurt, Geneva, Zurich, etc., if they have any leads on that, I think all that should be pulled together, because all these CCP money fronts need to be exposed, because they're going to create havoc not only in India. They want to create havoc. India and the United States are principal targets, but then so are Germany, so is the UK. So I think that's important. And if it is established that there is a CCP link, then it's a criminal act on the part of that fund, because the individual who's running it is an American citizen. He is duty bound to do what is best for the United States and not do anything that is hostile to the United States, and especially at the behest of foreign power. So I think the Chinese factor that Mahesh brought out is very, very important. And I again like to say, Megha, we have to be used to this kind of grey zone tactics. Frankly, I don't expect much to come out of SEBI's show cause. If I were in SEBI, I think I would have hesitated to send a show cause notice, because we have brought this issue back again, and then the people who have in the internal network who have been active in helping Hindenburg will again be activated. So personally, but anyway, now that it is done, at least one good thing has happened out of all this. It has shown the danger to the growth story of India. It has shown the risk posed to the success of Modi 3.0 by hostile actors manipulating institutions such as the stock market.
Right.
So I think that's a very important lesson that the country can learn. Indian stock market is doing very well because global interest is very high. Investor interest is very high, especially now that Modi 3.0 has come. And the effort will be to dampen that. And the effort will be to create problems in that. And I think all agencies, whether it is to do with SEBI or to do with other agencies, they've all got, and stock markets, brokers, everybody has got to be on the alert for that. And they should be watchful that they themselves do not become the pawns of this kind of hostile agency. But again, I remind you, Megha, as far as the Chinese CCP's mode of operation is, throw money in bucketfuls at someone and buy up that someone. But that can be done through various channels and not directly. So establishing the linkages is not going to be easy, but it is feasible.
Okay.
It's happened in the case of more than 300 Americans, and maybe this will become 301 or 302.
Okay, all right. I unfortunately, as an individual who's seen the Chinese Communist Party just wriggling out of a situation time and again, several times, and having their interests in various international organizations, businesses, they're deep rooted in the business ecosystem of countries across the globe. And how then difficult does it become for India to tackle the situation? Yes, we can be more alert to the situation. We can be cautious so that in the future such events don't happen, and we are equipped enough to ensure our stock markets do not get hurt by these short sellers and the maleficent plans of a country like China. But can the people, the individuals, the organizations who are behind this attack on India, India's biggest company, the world's top 3 entrepreneurs of the world, tycoons of the world, can there be action correctively taken against these individuals, against these people?